Now, as you guys already know, Travis Hunter, who is ranked as the #1 player in his recruiting class, flipped from Florida State to Jackson State. It made tons of headlines. It was trending on Twitter. And there were a lot of people who were asking me, JT, what is the impact of Travis Hunter going to Jackson State? What is it going to mean for the rest of the HBCUs out there? Because I have a couple of friends who currently attend FAMU, and they were asking me, like, what will Travis Hunter bring to not only Jackson State but to HBCUs as a whole? Like, are more high profile players like 4 and 5 stars going to end up going to more HBCUs? Like, what's going to happen? Well, I feel like Travis Hunter going to Jackson State is kind of, like a Jackson State thing. You look at Deion Sanders. He is one of the greatest cornerbacks to ever play the game. Travis Hunter is a cornerback. He also plays wide receiver as well. And on top of that, I feel like Deion Sanders has connections that a lot of other HBCUs don't have. Now, I'm not saying that, this doesn't mean anything for the rest of the HBCUs out there, because if you are currently running an HBCU or you're the head coach of an HBCU school and you're coaching football or basketball, you can definitely learn from this, because with the NIL and college athletes being able to get compensated for their name and likeness, it's going to open up opportunities to see guys like Travis Hunter end up leaving, these big time Division I schools like Alabama and Clemson, end up going to a Jackson State, because you have opportunities to make money, get sponsorships, get endorsements. So really, if you're an HBCU and you're trying to recruit a 5 or 4-star athlete, you gotta be able to make sure that you have sponsorships set in place, or you have NIL opportunities set in place for these guys to be able to make some cash, because that's one of the biggest reasons why Jackson State was able to attract Travis Hunter, is because not only did they have Coach Prime as their head coach, but he also was able to have some connections out there, and he's able to find ways to get Travis Hunter and other guys some NIL deals. And for schools like FAMU, I know that they have like a little partnership with LeBron James and Nike. Maybe they can try to find ways to get some NIL deals involved, where they can kind of pitch the recruits and say, hey, if you come to FAMU, we can kind of get you a little sponsorship or endorsement deal going on with Nike. It's things like that. Like, those NIL deals are going to be really big for schools like HBCUs if they're ever going to end up attracting big name players coming out of high school like Travis Hunter. Then you have Tennessee State. They have Eddie George as their head coach. Like, I love HBCUs. As I mentioned, I have a lot of friends who attend HBCUs. But if you're going to end up trying to lure these athletes away from schools like Alabama and Clemson, it's most likely going to be because of NIL. So you have to make sure that you have some big time NIL opportunities to make these 4 and 5-star recruits say, hey, okay, maybe I should go ahead and give these HBCUs a chance. Now, if I was a 5-star or 4-star athlete, I probably would end up going to an HBCU anyway, because I'm somebody who doesn't really care where I would play football at. I don't really care about the fancy facilities and whatnot. Like, I'm really somebody who's big on the culture. I'm big on the atmosphere. Like, I have to be in love with the campus before I end up going ahead and signing my name on a dotted line and saying that, hey, I'm going to spend the next 3-4 years of my life playing for your football program. I don't want to be there just for football. I also want to be there because I love the campus and I love the atmosphere. And definitely the HBCU experience is definitely something that can't be replicated anywhere else. Like, you have to go to a HBCU to really get the feel of it. It definitely is a great experience. It's a fun time. I think that Travis Hunter is going to have a pretty great 3-4 years of his life is going to be very good for him at Jackson State. I think he's going to have a very great time there. And on top of that, everybody has the argument that says, well, he's not going to go to the NFL, or you can't go to the NFL if you play for a HBCU. Like, that's not true. Like, there are plenty of players in the past that have played for HBCUs, like Jerry Wise. Right now, Tyreek Cohen, running back for the Chicago Bears, hasn't played much this season, but he went to North Carolina A&T, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're a baller and you can play, you're going to get scouts, you're going to attract eyes anywhere you go, especially if you have a coach like Deion Sanders who has connections. And we're starting to see more former players end up taking these HBCU coaching jobs, like Eddie George is currently the head coach of Tennessee State. So really, when it comes to being able to get to the pros from an HBCU school, that definitely can happen. Like, even Carson Wentz was drafted in the first round out of North Dakota State. Same thing with Trey Lance. He was drafted out of FCS school. Like, if you can ball, the scouts are going to go wherever the talent is. So going to HBCU doesn't really lower your chances of making it to the NFL or whatnot. That's a popular narrative that a lot of people keep throwing out there, and it's really false. On top of that, I feel like Travis Hunter is going to bring more eyes, because anytime Jackson State plays another HBCU school, it's going to have a lot of attention, because everybody wants to see how Travis Hunter is going to perform. So not only does it put the spotlight on Jackson State, but it's also going to put a spotlight on any other teams that they end up matching up against. So for HBCUs, I don't feel like Travis Hunter is going to have a big impact in terms of the broader landscape of HBCUs. I still feel like this is kind of a one-off thing, simply for the fact that this is Deion Sanders, and on top of that, Deion Sanders has a lot of connections. But I definitely feel like this is something that other HBCUs can learn from and take this into consideration, that, hey, if you're going to go after some of these big time high school athletes, you got to make sure that you have some NIL deals set in place that can lure those athletes to your HBCU. So that's my take on the whole Travis Hunter to Jackson State thing. I feel like his impact really isn't going to be as huge as what a lot of people think it is, because I was on a Twitter space and there were a lot of HBCU students talking about what this means for HBCU programs, and the impact really isn't going to be that large in terms of bringing other athletes to HBCUs. But I definitely feel like with NIL now in place, I feel like other HBCUs are now going to start finding ways to get more NIL deals for athletes, to get more highly ranked players to come play for their programs.